For the second part of this tutorial, we're going to create the Streamlit app that's going to use our model, our stroke prediction model. I'm here in Visual Studio, and I'm going to open the folder that has my stroke prediction information. So if we open it, and if we look up here in the Explorer, we've got our data set, which is our spreadsheet. We've got our pickle file, which is the model and scalar that we saved within our Jupyter notebook. And then we've also got our Jupyter notebook from the last video. I'm going to create a new file here, and I'm going to call it app.py. And this is going to be our Streamlit app. Okay, within here we are going to, first thing is just import all of our packages that we are going to need. So Streamlit, Pandas, NumPy, and Pickle. And then just to get started, I'm going to make a header with the title of Stroke Prediction App. And then underneath it, I'll just do this st_write with some instructions. So fill in the information to predict your risk of stroke, and let me go up here to a new terminal, and to run this, remember it's Streamlit run app.py, the name of our Python file, and this is what we, prediction I spelled incorrectly. Save it. Oh, we're going to always rerun this. So now it's spelled correctly, and we've got our instructions below. Okay, the next thing we want to do is to load the data. To do this, I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call it getData. And we've got our model and scalar. If you recall, when we dumped everything from Jupyter Notebook into the pickle file, we saved both of these, the model and the scalar, and combined it into one. So that's what we're going to output. So we're going to say equal, and it's pickle.load. So we're loading it, and what we're loading is an open file, and we have to give it the name. We called our stroke mdl.pickle, and we need to open it as read binary. The other thing I want to do is, because we're going to be using some of the labeling and getting information out of our original data set for the inputs, I'm going to load that into a data frame. So df equals pd, so we use the pandas library for this, and it's that read CSV and the name of the file, which is this healthcare. And then we are going to return model, scalar, and df to our calling function. What I'm going to do is move these things down, put all our functions at the top. We will then say get data, and we want to return it as model, scalar, and df, so that we get this in our main function here. So let's just save that. Our information will be loaded, and then what we want to do is start to put in the user interface for the user to add all the values that we want them to give us for the prediction. So the first one we'll ask them to give us is their age, and we're going to use a slider. We can just say age, and we could say 0 to 100, so it's the minimum, the maximum, and then let's put 50 as the starting value. So if I save that, this is what it looks like, and this is a slider. And so every time I move it, age will reflect that value. Age is now 24. So as the user moves it, it gets saved in that variable age. And then we're going to do gender, and that's going to be a radio button. So we'll use a few different types of input, and this one I'm going to put as label equals gender, and I'll put options equal. Generally you can put these parameters in the correct order, and you can also label them. So I'm just going to label what each parameter is. So the options are going to be, and this is going to be an array, so I'll put male, female, and we are going to give the option as other for people who don't identify as male or female. And if we save that, We now get that as an option, male, female, other. Married is the next one we want, and this is also going to be a radio button. This will be label equals ever married, and the options are going to be yes or no. Make sure everything matches up there. And then we're going to have a few that have the options of yes or no. So we've got hypertension was one, and this will be just hypertension. Heart disease is the next one. Save that, and we've got an error. Okay, so I've got this out of order here, and probably the same thing here. Too many parentheses, so let's save that. Okay, so now we've got it appearing. So we've got a series of radio boxes. Glucose level, and that will be a slider because that's just going to be a number value. We'll say average glucose level, and that's going to go from 0 to, let's say, 300. And the starting value, this is where I'm going to use my data frame up here, because I want to get the mean value or the average value of the data set as the starting value. This will be DF, and the name of that column is AVG underscore glucose underscore level, and we're going to get the mean of that. And this is going to give us a floating point number, and we want an integer, so we just have to put int around this. And if I save that, you can see that it appears as 106 as the mean. We'll just leave that as kind of the starting value. And I'm going to just copy this and do the same for BMI. And this will just go up to 70, and we want the average of BMI. Okay, so the average in our data set was 28. And then the last thing is going to be smoked, so the smoking status. So it's called the smoked, and this I'm going to use the select box, which is just a drop-down menu or drop-down chooser. And we're going to label this as smoking status. Again, I'm going to use my data frame to pull out those unique values. So we could say DF smoking status, and we're going to get the unique values of that column. And save it. You can see now we get this drop down, which gives us the 4 options: formerly smoked, never smoked, smokes, and unknown out of our data set. We've got all the information we need to be able to feed into our model to make a prediction, but we got to do a few things to it. First off, remember, everything needs to be a number. A lot of these things are not numbers. We've got these values here, and then we also have to scale them. So let's first worry about the numbers. So I'm first going to put them into a data frame, really. So if you do a double bracket, it creates this row of information, right? So we're passing it kind of a row of data that we want to make a prediction on. And let's give it the different features that we want to look at. And we want to put it in the order in which they show up here. So gender, age, hypertension, heart disease, married, glucose, BMI, and smoked. So we'll start with this, even though we still have to do some massaging of information. The first thing is, let's deal with the gender issue. So we're giving the options for male, female, other, but in fact our model only has the 2 options, 1 and 0. So we're going to say if what they've entered is male, we know that that is male is the 1 and female is the 0. So gender equals 1, and we'll say else if gender equals female, we're going to return gender equals 0. And in this case, we gave the option for others. So that would be the other option of the 3. And because our model is only taking a 1 or a 0, what we're going to do is just randomly choose a 1 or a 0 if the person has put in other as their gender. So I'm going to say gender equals, and it's random.choice is the function in Python, and you can pass it in an array with the possible values. So we'll randomly choose a 0 or a 1, and I'm seeing that it's not understanding random, so I think I need to go up here and import it, import random as another package. Let's just save that. Go back here. Okay, so we're not getting any errors, so that should be all right. We've updated gender, and then the other thing is we've got a lot of yes, no, marriage, hypertension, heart disease. Because they're all going to pretty much use the same code to translate a yes to a 1 and a no to a 0, I'm going to make this into a function. I'll call it yes, no, and let's just say n is the input, which will either be the value yes or no. If n equals yes, let's return a 1, and we'll just, the only other option is no, so we'll just say else return 0. What we can then do is say for hypertension, if we pass that to the yes no function, same with heart disease, and let me just bring this down, and this will be yes, no, married. So those three features we are going to convert from the words yes and no to a 1 or a 0. Glucose, BMI are already numbers. And now our last thing to deal with is smoke. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to do this kind of bit of Python code to do this. We've got the 4 possible values, and I want to convert them to the values 0, 1, 2, and 3. So I've got this here, and I want to create a list of the possible values that we can have for smoke. So let's just go through them in the order that we have them. So looking back here, formerly smoked is my first one, and formerly smoked is the value 1. So I think it's going to end up being 1, 2, 3. Next is never smoked. Never smoked is 2. And then smokes is 3, so that leaves us with 0 for the unknown. So those are the possible values that match in the same order as this. So we've got the value list and we've got this array of the unique values. Now we're going to make a dictionary with these as the keys and these as the values. Dictionary is similar to an array, but you have, instead of just a bunch of values, you have key value pairs. And what I want to do is pair these keys with the values. So I'm going to call it smoking dict for short, and it's going to be, a dictionary has these curly braces, and we're going to say key value for key colon value for key value in, and we're going to pair these two up by using this zip function. So zip basically zips two lists together into pairs, so pairs them up, pretty much what we want to do for this dictionary. This will be the first part of the zip, and the second part will be the value list. And let me just make sure that that's going to work. Just make this a little bit bigger so we can see the full. So save that, and let me just print this so we can see that we are getting what we want. So again, I'm going to save it. Oh, and I just need to say rerun. Okay, so we'll get this down here, and it's got formerly smoked, never smoked, smokes, and unknown as the ones, and formerly smoked, never smoked, smokes is 3, and unknown is 3. So that we've got it the way we want it, so we can comment that out now. We are almost there. So we've now got our values, we've got our dictionary, and now what we want to do is here instead of smoked, go to the smoking dictionary, and we want to get the value for smoked. Smoked is going to be one of our 4 values. That's going to be the key, and we want to get the value to go with the key. And if I save that, now we can probably print user values. So let's try that. Okay, so they're all numbers. Let's change this to no, and maybe this to no. And you see that those have changed. Let's change this to smokes, and it changes. Okay, so our user values is looking good. I'm going to put in a button that will say predict, and the idea behind it is the user will click predict, but nothing's going to happen until we put in code. So in Python, we could say if. What that means is if the button's pressed. So if that happens, and we can just put the code directly here as to what we want to happen. The first thing we want to do is take our user values, and we want to scale them. So if you remember, we have to scale them on that scale from -1 to 1. so that the model can actually read the values. So we're going to say scalar, which we got from up here from our pickle file, and we're going to use the transform function on our user values. So now we've got a scaled set of values, and then we want to pass that to the model and predict it. So we take that and predict it, and we're going to save that in a result. The result will either be a 1 or a 0. So remembering that the model will predict 1 for stroke, 0 for no stroke. And now that we've got the result, we want to just print it out. I'm going to make a string just saying the stroke risk is, and then we'll just say if result is equal to 1, we'll just say add to risk the word high, and then we'll just say else, which would mean that the result is 0, risk plus equals low. And then what we can do is, I'm just going to use a subheader for a slightly larger font, and we'll just print out risk. So let's save that, hit predict. So for that one, the stroke risk is low. I'm going to go back to the one that I used over here to do a bunch of testing with. This one, so 68-year-old male, not married. Okay, so we'll do male, 68, yes, and I think this was up to 228, something like that. And this was 36. And I believe it was never smoked. Predict high. So that works. Lowering it and probably changing it to a younger person, just saying no to these, would probably get us a low. Looking at this, it's apparent to me that this model is not that great. It doesn't do such a great prediction. I think it's really due to the fact that we had a very unbalanced data set, or not enough data to make a really good model. What we could do is go back to our notebook and work more on the modeling and try to play a little bit with the parameters, maybe try a different classification algorithm to build the model. But in general, the point of this tutorial was to show you the process. So the process is, work in Jupyter Notebooks, build some models, come up with a model that you're happy with, and then you can export it using Pickle, come back in, import it, set up whatever criteria you want, and then you can predict the model. So you can see with not a lot of code, we were able to create a nice looking app that would predict with moderate accuracy the stroke risk.